No, I believe it's a real position because I believe that Saudi public opinion and Arab public opinion is now very strongly against moves towards recognition of Israel until some movement, some progress, and acceptance of the two-state solution is done. So I think that's a real position for the Saudi government and the Saudi Crown Prince. But the issue is what is the definition of progress towards a two-state solution? That is, I think, what we need to focus on. Yes, well, uh, the Palestinian deal is one of the issues that is of interest to Saudi Arabia, as I see it. Um, of course, they're looking for defense purchases. They are looking for security guarantees from the United States. They're looking for peaceful nuclear cooperation with the US. So one has to see what actually transpires on these issues. And then the fourth issue, which is what the US would want and what the Israelis would want, is Saudi recognition. Uh, I don't think that unless Saudi Arabia gets a very generous support from the US, that much likelihood is there of progress on the issue of the Abraham Accords. I believe at the present time, Saudi Arabia will not be able to accept coming into the Abraham Accords. Uh, when and if the Israelis come to a position that they accept the two-state solution and some form of negotiations or some form of actions are initiated to establish the two-state solution, I think that is the point at which the Saudis may be willing to consider going back to the acceptance of Israel and the Abraham Accords. But I think at that time is not here yet, and I think that will take some time. No, it's not. It's neither stepping back, nor do I think that this is meant to be leverage. I think this is a reflection of the reality on the ground. The peace ceasefire has taken place, but the implementation of the ceasefire and the implementation of the next steps, which were envisaged in the Trump peace plan, those are those look quite dicey at the moment. Hamas has not agreed to disarm. The Israelis have not fully withdrawn from Gaza. They are still in half, at least half of Gaza. They are still continuing to occupy. And the future, therefore, looks a little hazy. And under the circumstances, I think the Israelis and the Americans are saying we will rebuild parts of the Gaza where Israel is. I think that would be contrary to the spirit, at least, of the peace plan that was presented. The reconstruction has to be led by the Palestinians, and therefore we need Palestinian governance. And once there is Palestinian governance, then friends of Palestine and the international community can come in and help for the reconstruction of Gaza. So I think the Saudis are quite right to not commit themselves at this moment. I think that's very smart. Well, I think the Saudi-US relationship is an old relationship. And what is happening is the reconstitution of that old relationship. But of course, today's Saudi Arabia is different from the previous Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia now is all of us are living in a multipolar world, and therefore the U.S.-Saudi partnership is an old partnership, but it's one of Saudi Arabia's partnerships. They also have good relations with China, Russia, Pakistan, India, etc. So I think we have to see it in that context. It's not surprising, and the attempts to try and isolate Saudi Arabia or blame the Crown Prince on for this incident, um, I think that's all in the past. That is not relevant to the geopolitics of today. And I believe that Mr. Trump and the US administration is quite right to sidestep the whole issue and to look at the geopolitical realities and what Saudi Arabia can do vis-a-vis the region. And Saudi Arabia has a very important role in the whole Middle East region. And it is quite correct, therefore, that the US recognizes that Saudi Arabia has that role and is trying to establish a good and close partnership with Saudi Arabia. Well, I think everybody should play a long strategic game because you are negotiating in the interests, the long-term interests of your country. So it's quite right. But people, these Israeli lobby gets fixated on the Israeli issue and recognition and so forth. The fact of the matter is that Saudi Arabia is a very important partner for the United States in so many other ways. There is the whole management of the oil economy. Cannot happen without Saudi Arabia. Secondly, the Saudis have committed $1 trillion. Now, whether this 1 trillion happens or half of that happens, it's major investment that they've committed in the US. Thirdly, they are partnering with the US not only on the defense side, and they're, of course, buying US arms, which the US wants to sell, uh, but they're also partnering in new areas such as artificial intelligence and the digital economy, which is the future. And therefore, this partnership has to be looked at in a comprehensive way and not from the sort of narrow perspective which the Israeli lobby promotes in Washington, which is just focused on Israel, recognition of Israel. Now, that will only happen once the Israelis come to their senses and agree to a two-state solution. Well, that is, of course, a judgment that will have to be made. It's obvious a projection or a possibility that you mentioned. We will have to see exactly when that happens or if it happens, and then have to make our own judgment of what is in our best interest. I think nations should adopt principled positions, and our position reflects principles as well as the sentiments of our people. And we will have to take whatever decision we take, we will have to take those decisions taking into mind the principles, views of our people, and our national interest. Well, I don't I don't think we should mix up things. You know, we should have we should have our own strategic clarity. Our relationship and our defense pact with Saudi Arabia is a bilateral pact. It's a defensive pact in which we are providing some form of security umbrella or assurances to Saudi Arabia, while Saudi Arabia will help Pakistan in investment, in building our manufacturing and infrastructure capabilities, and therefore it's a mutually beneficial partnership as such. We should be cautious in relating this to any other relationships between Saudi Arabia or between Pakistan and third countries. We each have our own strategic location, our own strategic place, and we should be cautious in crossing lines between these strategic relationships that each country has with third countries. Well, I think the Middle East environment at the present moment has considerably changed from, say, a decade ago. A decade ago, the Saudis saw Iran as the principal threat to their security. That has changed. I think with Israel's wars on several fronts since October 2023, it is clear that most of the countries of the region, including the Gulf countries, see the largest threat emanating from Israel rather than Iran. And given the fact that the Iranians have suffered military setbacks because of the attacks on them by the Israelis and then latest by the US bombing on their nuclear facilities, um, Iran, in both in capability terms as well as in political objectives, poses a diminished threat to Saudi Arabia and to other Gulf countries as such. And in this context, it is in Pakistan's interest to build the partnerships and the relationships both with Saudi Arabia and the other Gulf countries, while at the same time trying to bring in Iran into the matrix of relations in this region. It is only through a mutual assurances, mutual confidence in each other that we will be able to achieve stability in the Gulf region and in the broader Middle East region. And we must be clear that the threat of destabilization arises from Netanyahu and his extremist government rather than from anybody else. And I think this is a framework which is generally accepted within the Gulf region. And we need to work within that framework to promote stability in this region. I think that's really reading deep in between the lines. I don't think, in my view, I don't think that President Trump was either surprised or finds this totally unacceptable. I think his peace plan does clearly envisage that progress should be made towards Palestinian self-determination and statehood. And of course, Netanyahu doesn't accept that at the moment. And on the other side, the Arab countries do not accept that there will not be a two-state solution. And the Saudis are very clear, and we have been very clear that there has to be a two-state solution. I think President Trump understands that. The U.S. is a sophisticated power. They understand that. And I think the negotiating process will have to find a way in which Palestinian national rights will have to be accommodated, and that's fully understandable. I don't think those people reading between the lines are right. I think I mentioned as I mentioned previously, this is a new Middle East. In that Netanyahu's right, he says this is a new Middle East. Yes, this is a new Middle East in which the most destabilizing power is Israel. The threat that was seen from Iran has diminished. Uh, I think the best approach, obviously, Pakistan and Saudi Arabia have entered into this bilateral arrangement. We hope that because of Pakistani cooperation with Saudi Arabia, that they will have a more comfortable defense perspective, that they will not face the threat, which is principally from Israel, even if it is not stated. Um, but I think on one hand, they feel comfortable. Uh, Pakistan is able to benefit from this partnership to build up its own capability, both defense and economic, manufacturing, industrial capabilities. And that all of us, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, other GCC countries, extend an embrace to the Iranians uh, as a regional player with legitimate interests uh, and help the Iranians to resolve this nuclear issue in which they have become entangled because of international circumstances, some tactical mistakes, whatever. Uh, we have to be helpful together with other members of the region and other international players to bring the Iranians back into a stable regional situation. And I think even the Americans are prepared for that. Israel is not, Netanyahu is not. Netanyahu and his extremists are the destabilizers of this region. And therefore, we have to work with everybody, including the United States, Russia, China, and regional countries, in order to bring a stable order into this region. That's one of the challenges for our diplomacy in West Asia. Of course, we have many other challenges. As you know, we have Afghanistan is a challenge. India is a permanent challenge. But I think we have ways to deal with all of them. We have ways to deal with all of them. Our diplomacy has demonstrated that we are capable of dealing with each one of these challenges. Um, but the bottom line for us has to be to utilize all relationships in order to promote Pakistan's economic and social development, our defense capabilities, which are essential if we are going to survive in this multipolar and highly dangerous world that we live in.